Greetings! Welcome to Nina's World. This podcast provides a short respite from the trials and tribulations of everyday life. We're going to step back in time to the 1950s and 60s. And now, our story. Today's episode, Nina's Criminal Past Revealed. Just go. Day 1. A knock on the door. The door opens. Mrs. Finch, a neighbor, enters to stay with the youngest children, while Nina and her mother exit and start the almost mile walk to the building with grill-covered windows, red brick, scrawny shrubs. It's chilly. The sky muted by clouds that could produce snow if they had a hankering. Her mother leaves Nina in a room with a strange adult and some similarly distressed-looking children. Later in the day, her siblings negotiate her release, and they walk home together. Nina looks over her shoulder to see if they're being followed. Day 2. No Mrs. Finch. Door opens. Nina is sent alone to walk to the institution. The door closes. The trek begins. Nina didn't want to go. Didn't think she should have to go alone. Decided not to go. Nina went home. Nina sat on the ledge, the cold slate stinging her naked legs. Nina sat on the ledge, the cold slate stinging her legs, knee socks around her ankles. Nina sat on the ledge, the cold slate stinging her naked legs, knee socks around her ankles, feet barely touching the ground. Nina sat on the ledge, the cold slate stinging her naked legs, knee socks around her ankles, feet barely touching the ground, and thinks, this is not fun. I have been satisfied with how things were. This is not how I thought it would be when the change was made. The isolation of the long walk, no answers to my question why. Nina sat on the ledge, the cold slate stinging her naked legs, knee socks around her ankles, feet barely touching the ground, ruminating about the changes that brought her to this point. It was a lonesome journey to an undesirable destination. Nina heard the front door of the house open, the click, click of her mother's shoes nearing. She shook herself from the daydream. Too late to find a hiding place behind the hedge, Nina tried to make herself small. Her back to Nina, Nina's mother opened the mailbox, shuffled through the envelopes, closed the lid. As she turned a sharp intake of breath. What are you doing here? I sent you. Oh, come into the house. It's cold out here. You'll catch a cold. The living room felt like warm pajamas. Victory. Too late to be sent away that afternoon, but not too late to take a nap on the couch. Just what she needed to melt away her dismay. A few hours later, her siblings returned, inquiring why Nina had not been where they expected her to be, but glad that she was safe, and yet even understanding why Nina was protesting, knew they could not help her, knew they could not change the decision that had been made. Day 3. Door opens. Nina is shooed into the wilderness, the vast tundra, the great plains. Her mother watches her walk up the street, waves, waits to make sure Nina is truly on her way, turns, closes the door. Nina turns also and returns to the house, but, having learned her lesson, hides in the enclosed storage steps on the side of the house. A call from the boss lady at the institution, asks about Nina's now 2-day absence. It alarms her mother. She should have called yesterday. She knows she should have called yesterday after she brought Nina back into the house, but not today. No, not today. She knows she saw Nina walk up the street, past Mrs. Zink's house, past the duplex, almost to Mrs. Herkert's house. Where could Nina be? Her mother looks behind the hedge, calls her husband, her neighbor, and the police. Mrs. Finch, only having to cross the street, arrives first, dishcloth in hand. Nina's father rushes from work. The police pull in front of the house. Questions are asked about clothing, time of departure, route Nina would have taken, her destination. The patrolmen exchange a knowing, uncomfortable look. One goes to the police cruiser to call dispatch. Other police arrive. The search of the house, neighborhood, path Nina would have taken is in full throttle. Time is of the essence. They search the garage, attic, each room, the basement, and opening a door to go to the yard, they find Nina, asleep on the side steps, with her head resting on a 5-pound bag of redless potatoes, drool sliding from her mouth, her jacket pulled close. Nina is awakened, taken into the house, given a stern talking to from her frightened but relieved parents. Hugging her so hard, rocking Nina in their arms, thanking God that their Nina is safe. A walkie-talkie squawks, and the police officer walks to the kitchen to share the good news. Mrs. Finch quietly excuses herself, and a stern lecture about her responsibilities is sharply delivered to Nina from the police officers. Her dad calls the factory office to say all is well, and is grateful to be told that he can take the rest of the afternoon to be with his wife and children. Her mom and dad hug Nina again so tightly she begins to squirm. Day 4. The door opens. The noose is tightening. Nina realizes she'll be under surveillance and has few choices. Decisions have to be made, and they have to be made now. Nina will have to accept the switch to afternoon kindergarten or go to jail. She will weigh the options on her way home from school. The end. Friends, we have just a few more minutes. Why not a couple poems that Nina liked very, very much? Both of them were written by Robert Louis Stevenson. The Swing. How do you like to go up in a swing, up in the air so blue? Oh, I do think it's the pleasantest thing ever a child can do. Up in the air and over the wall, till I can see so wide, rivers and trees and cattle and all, over the countryside. Till I look down on the garden green, down on the roof so brown, up in the air I go flying again, up in the air and down. My shadow. I have a little shadow that goes in and out with me, and what can be the use of him is more than I can see. He's very, very like me, from the heels up to the head, and I see him jump before me when I jump into my bed. The funniest thing about him is the way he likes to grow, not at all like proper children, which is always very slow. For he sometimes shoots up taller, like an Indian rubber ball, and he sometimes gets so little that there's none of him at all. He hasn't got a notion of how children ought to play, and can only make a fool of me in every sort of way. He stays so close beside me, he's a coward, you can see. I'd think shame to stick to Nursey, as that shadow sticks to me. One morning, very early, before the sun was up, I rose and found the shining dew on every buttercup. But my lazy little shadow, like an errant sleepy head, had stayed at home behind me and was fast asleep in bed. Poetry is such fun, so wonderful. See you next week. Thank you for visiting with us today. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to this podcast and share it with everyone you know. Return next week for another story from Nina's World. This story was written and read by Christine McKee, with gratitude to Dr. Ethel Racken of Bucks County Community College for editorial consultation and encouragement. Additional heartfelt support from family, friends, and members of my writing groups. Technical support was provided by Mr. Dan Tarrant of Personally Catholic. Sound engineering by Mr. Andrew Kimmock of AK Productions. May you embrace peace in your heart, in your home, and in your world.